330 BC. The world's greatest city is ablaze. The man holding the torch is no barbarian. He is no savage. He is Alexander the Great, the most educated man of his time. Aristotle's pupil and the self-proclaimed savior of the Persian people. And he is burning Persepolis, deliberately, personally, one building after another. Her name was Thais. She was an Athenian courtesan and the most famous woman in Alexander's court. According to the historian Diodorus, it was her idea. At a banquet, drunk with victory and wine, she stood up and gave a speech. She reminded the guests that the Persians had burned Athens 150 years earlier. She said that although Alexander had conquered the world, he had not yet avenged that fire. She said, "Let me be the one to light the fire. Let the empire that destroyed Greece be ended by a woman's hand." Alexander laughed. He took a torch. He led the mockery himself. The palace, which had taken over 60 years to build and house the treasures of 36 conquered nations, burned for days. Some historians regard this as the greatest cultural destruction of the ancient world. Others claim that Alexander regretted it before the ashes had even cooled. He later called it his greatest mistake. The city was already gone. Persepolis was not just a palace, it made a statement. Darius the Great began building this palace in 518 BC on a 125,000 square meter rock platform inside a mountain. Architects from Greece, craftsmen from Egypt, and materials such as cedar wood from Lebanon, gold from Bactria, and ivory from Ethiopia were brought in. The Apadana throne room alone could accommodate 10,000 standing people. Its columns were 20 meters high, taller than any structure in Greece. Carved into its walls in eternal stone were these words: "Delegates from 36 countries around the world, each bearing a gift, acknowledge this city, this platform, and this mountain as the center of the world." And then Alexander burned it. Not in war, not by accident, at a party. The city, which had been built over 3 generations, was destroyed in a 3-day fire. Those who survived the fire remained standing for another 2,300 years. The stone columns still stand. The reliefs are clear enough to read, and the staircase carvings are so delicate that modern archaeologists can identify every official who used these stairs 2,500 years ago. What the fire could not destroy, time could not either. Persepolis refused to perish. Using advanced artificial intelligence, trained on Persian art, archaeological records, and primary Greek and Persian sources, we will reconstruct Persepolis as it truly was at the height of its power and during its era as the most magnificent man-made structure on Earth. You are about to see the throne room of the Persian kings. The procession of 36 nations, Xerxes' private quarters, the treasury that funded the largest army the ancient world had ever seen. And then there was the night Alexander burned everything. This is the history of Persepolis in its entirety. Until we meet again in the past. Before Persepolis, there was a man named Cyrus. His name was Cyrus, Great Cyrus. In 550 BC, he achieved something that had never been done before in that region. In less than 20 years, he had conquered the 3 most powerful kingdoms in the world: Media, Lydia, and Babylon. However, it wasn't his conquests that made him legendary. It was what he did afterwards that made him legendary. When he entered Babylon in 539 BC, Cyrus did not enslave the people. He did not plunder the temples. He did not impose Persian religion or culture. Instead, he proclaimed something that no other conqueror had ever said before: that all the peoples under his rule had the right to worship their own gods, speak their own languages, and live according to their own traditions. He freed the Jews from Babylonian captivity and allowed them to return to Jerusalem. He is the only non-Jewish person referred to as the Messiah in the Hebrew Bible. The Babylonians called him a savior. The Greeks, who would later fight to the death against his descendants, acknowledged him as an exemplary king. Aristotle quoted him. Thomas Jefferson read about him. A replica of his cylinder is displayed in the lobby of the UN General Assembly today. Cyrus did more than just establish an empire. He also wrote the world's first human rights declaration. His descendants built Persepolis as a monument to everything he stood for: Cyrus died in battle in 530 BC. His son, Cambyses, conquered Egypt and incorporated the Nile into the Persian world. However, Cambyses died without an heir and was probably insane, leaving the empire on the verge of collapse. Amidst the chaos, a man from a branch of the royal family emerged. His name was Darius. He was 28 years old. Within a year in 522 BC, he fought 19 battles, defeated 9 kings, and reunited an empire stretching from Greece to India. Then he did something extraordinary. He carved the entire story onto a rock. This is known as the Behistun inscription. Carved in 3 languages, Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, on a rock face 100 meters above the ground, it was intended for anyone in the empire who could read. Darius listed every battle and every victory he had achieved, as well as every rebel he had defeated. He also added the names of the kings he had vanquished. He depicted himself with his foot on a rebel's chest and the god Ahura Mazda watching from above. This inscription was so important that it became the Rosetta Stone of the Persian world, enabling modern scholars to decipher cuneiform. Without Darius's grandiose project, we might not be able to read ancient Mesopotamian texts today. Darius was 28 years old. He had conquered the world. Now he would build something worthy of ruling it. 518 BC. Darius chooses a location, not a city, not a crossroads. It is a mountain terrace in the Persian province, the homeland of the ancestors of the Persian people. He had a 125,000 square meter platform carved out of solid rock. He brings in architects from Greece, craftsmen from Egypt and Babylon, and sources cedar wood from Lebanon, gold from Bactria and Sardis, ivory from Ethiopia and India, and silver and ebony from Egypt. How do we know this? Darius had it written down. The Persepolis inscription tablets, 30,000 clay tablets discovered by archaeologists, record every payment, every worker, and every delivery of materials. They even list the names of the Greek architects who designed the columns. They also list the daily rations of Babylonian craftsmen. They even list the payments made to Egyptian stonemasons. This was the most international construction project of the ancient world. This was the most international construction project of the ancient world. Buried in these tablets was something no one expected: equal pay. Female workers at Persepolis received the same rations as male workers doing the same job. In 518 BC, Greece, the civilization that we regard as the birthplace of democracy, was still debating whether women were fully human. At the heart of Persepolis stood the Apadana. This was the throne room of the Persian kings. Darius began its construction. Xerxes completed it. It stood on a 3-meter high platform above the main terrace. 72 2-0-meter high columns with bull-headed capitals supported a roof covering an area of 60 x 60 meters. The columns were painted. The walls were covered in glazed bricks. The ceilings were made of Lebanese cedar and inlaid with gold and precious stones. At its peak, the Apadana could accommodate 10,000 standing people. Every year, on Nowruz, the Persian New Year, delegations from every corner of the empire climbed the steps of the Apadana. We can still see their faces. The carved reliefs on these steps depict delegates from 36 nations, including the Medes, Elamites, Armenians, Babylonians, Arabs, Indians, and Ethiopians, each bearing tribute from their lands. Some carry folded cloths, others carry vessels, others bring animals, horses, camels, a giraffe, and an okapi, a giraffe, at Persepolis. It was brought as tribute from the depths of Africa to the throne room of the Persian king. Persepolis was not just the largest building in the ancient world. It was a visual encyclopedia of the human world in 500 BC. Darius built the treasury behind the Apadana. This structure was not intended to be decorative. It was functional. Every year at Nowruz, tribute in the form of gold, silver, ivory, and precious stones was transported to Persepolis from 36 nations and stored there. When Alexander the Great plundered the treasury in 330 BC, his actions were recorded by historians. The figures are staggering. 120,000 talents of gold and silver. In modern terms, This equates to a value between $180 and $300 billion. This was the largest accumulation of precious metals in the ancient world. It took 20,000 mules and 5,000 camels to transport it all. But the treasury represented more than just wealth. It was also the administrative center of the empire. The cuneiform tablets, 30,000 clay tablets, were stored here. It was the administrative center of the empire. The cuneiform tablets, 30,000 clay records, were stored here. Every transaction in the empire, stretching from the Aegean to the Indus, was recorded and filed and could be retrieved. This was not a primitive system. It was a bureaucracy capable of competing with modern states. The Persian Empire was governed by paperwork. At the center of all this paperwork was a building in Persepolis, which Alexander's soldiers used as a stable after capturing the city. History finds a way to humble grandeur. Darius died in 486 BC, before the completion of Persepolis. His son, Xerxes, inherited the throne and the construction project. Xerxes completed the Apadana. He also built the Gate of All Nations, the monumental entrance to Persepolis. On either side of the gate stood stone bulls, each 8 meters high. Xerxes also added his own palace, which was larger and more elaborate than his father's. Xerxes inscribed his name on nearly all the important buildings at Persepolis, often covering his father's inscriptions with his own. The completion of Persepolis is recorded as the greatest achievement of the Persian Empire. However, history has not been kind to Xerxes. He is primarily remembered for one thing: the invasion of Greece. In 480 BC, he crossed the Hellespont with an army estimated by historians to number between 100,000 and 300,000 men, the largest military force the ancient world had ever assembled. He burned Athens. He burned the temples on the Acropolis. He destroyed the sacred precinct of the gods of the civilization that would define Western culture. The Greeks never forgot this. 150 years later, Alexander took the memory of the burned temples to Persepolis. This was brought up by Thais at the banquet. History repeated the cycle that Xerxes had begun on the Acropolis in 480 BC. At its peak, between 520 and 480 BC, Persepolis was unlike anything the ancient world had ever seen. Stand at the top of the Great Staircase and look around you. To your left is the 20-meter-high Apadana with its 72 red, blue, and gold columns. Behind you is the Gate of All Nations with stone bulls watching over everyone who enters. To your right is the Hall of 100 Columns, Xerxes' throne room, with a ceiling supported by 100 columns arranged in perfect rows. In front of you are the royal quarters and the harems of Darius and Xerxes, as well as the council chamber. Below, in the Marvdasht plain, lies the city of Persepolis, with its artisans' quarters, administrative buildings, military barracks, gardens, and water systems. This was not just a palace on a hill. This was a civilization on a platform. Every year, when the Nauruz delegations climbed the steps and entered the Apadana, they stood in the most impressive room ever built by human hands. They looked at the man sitting on the throne and knew deep down that this empire was here to stay. But this was wrong, but it was magnificent. In Persepolis, there is a room known to archaeologists as the Treasury Chamber. While cleaning this room in 1933, the Oriental Institute excavation team discovered something unexpected: a sealed chamber. Inside were gold and silver vessels, still wrapped in linen cloth, jewelry, furniture, objects carved from ivory, and something else: a series of tablets inscribed in Aramaic, the administrative language of the empire, which record transactions from the reign of Darius. Routine transactions, oil payments, grain deliveries, a stonemason's wages. However, one tablet listed a payment made to a group of workers, described only as the women of the royal household. This payment was for a specific service: mourning, professional mourning. Darius had a room filled with women whose job it was to mourn, not just for him, for the empire, for the burden of ruling the world. He was the richest man alive and lived in the most magnificent building ever constructed. Surrounded by the tributes of 36 nations, he had a room where professional mourners reminded him of the price of it all. We do not know their names. We do not know if he ever visited that room, but the room was built. The women were paid. Darius understood that power gained without mourning was merely tyranny crowned. The Persian Wars are taught from a Greek perspective. Thermopylae, Salamis, 300. But what if we look at it from the Persian perspective? In 490 BC, Darius launched a campaign to punish Athens for supporting a rebellion in Ionia, which was under Persian control. However, the Athenians defeated his army at Marathon. Darius died before he could send a larger army. He dies before he can do so. In 480 BC, Xerxes sent an invasion force of 300,000. He won the Battle of Thermopylae. He burned Athens. It seems he is winning everything. Then came Salamis. The smaller, faster Athenian fleet traps the Persian fleet in a narrow strait and destroys it. Xerxes watches the events unfold from his golden throne on the shore. He retreats. The invasion fails. The Greeks celebrate. The West continues to celebrate to this day. However, Western history books often omit the fact that the Persian Empire did not collapse. In fact, it did not even weaken significantly. In fact, after Salamis, the Persian Empire continued to exist for another 150 years. Xerxes returned to Persepolis, completed the Hall of 100 Columns, and continued ruling the world's largest empire. Salamis was a victory for the Greeks, but for the Persians, it was merely a minor detail. 330 BC, Alexander defeated Darius III at Gaugamela. The Persian Empire collapsed. Darius III fled. He was killed by his own generals within a few months. Alexander then marched towards Persepolis. The city's garrison surrendered without a fight. Alexander entered the world's most magnificent building and did something extraordinary. He sat on the throne of the Persian kings. The throne was carved from stone, built by Darius, upon which Xerxes had sat, before which 36 nations had bowed. Alexander was 25 years old. As he sat on that throne, he looked at the Apadana, the Hall of 100 Columns, and the Treasury that he was about to plunder. His generals are waiting to plunder it, but they do not expect what will happen next. Alexander orders the royal treasury to be paid to the soldiers, but instructs that the city and its people are to be protected. He walks through the rooms built by Darius. He reads the inscriptions. Alexander was educated by Aristotle, who taught him to respect Persian civilization. Then, at a banquet celebrating his victory, a woman named Thais stands up and addresses the assembly. Alexander takes a torch. Before we continue, I have a question for you. What aspect of the Persian Empire strikes you as the most striking? Is it the Cyrus cylinder, which is considered to be the world's first human rights declaration, created 2,500 years before the UN Declaration? Or was it Persepolis, the most international construction project undertaken in the ancient world? Or perhaps it was the equal pay records, which show that female workers received the same wages as men in 518 BC, while the Greeks were debating whether women were fully human. Share your answer in the comments. If you found this history-changing perspective on the ancient world interesting, please like and subscribe. Now, let's move on to part 2 of Persepolis. The morning after the fire, Alexander wandered among the ruins. According to ancient sources, this is what happened next. He wept, not for show, not for the crowd. Standing among the ashes of the Apadana, he realized what he had done. According to his most reliable historian, Arrian, Alexander immediately considered the fire to be his greatest mistake. For years, he had presented himself as the legitimate heir to the Persian kings, not their destroyer. He had ordered the protection of the people. He had shown respect for Persian customs. He had even begun to wear Persian clothing, much to the scandal of his Macedonian generals. And then, drunk at a party, he burned the very thing he was trying to inherit. Those who survived tell us what was lost. The columns of the Apadana. 6 of them still stand today and can be seen from 40 kilometers away. The staircase reliefs. They are still intact enough to make out the faces. The gate of all nations. It is still standing. and the stone bulls are still standing guard 2,300 years after the fire. The treasury's walls still stand, and its administrative records were preserved in the ashes created by Alexander. He burned it down. In doing so, he accidentally preserved evidence of everything that once existed. History is sometimes saved by the very disaster that destroys it. Persepolis remained exposed for 2,000 years. It was not buried, it was not hidden. Its columns were always visible. The local people named this place Takhti Jamshid, meaning Throne of Jamshid. This name comes from a legendary Persian king in their mythology. From the 16th century onwards, travelers from Europe began visiting, making sketches, and copying inscriptions. However, no one understood what they saw. In 1930, the Oriental Institute of the University of Chicago sent Ernst Herzfeld to Persepolis. He initiated the first systematic excavation. His discoveries changed everything. The administrative tablets, 30,000 clay administrative records, were found in a sealed room. They had been perfectly preserved by a fire that destroyed the palace above them. Some of the tablets were still inside the baskets in which they had been stored 2,300 years earlier. In 1938, Herzfeld's successor, Erich Schmidt, continued the excavations. He took the first aerial photographs of Persepolis by photographing the site from a biplane. Viewed from above, the true scale of the site became clear for the first time. The platform, the approach roads, the administrative city beneath the terrace. All of this was visible from the air, something that had never been revealed by ground-level exploration. Iranian archaeologists took over the excavations after the Second World War and have continued them to this day. New discoveries are made every decade. In 2018, for example, a team discovered an unknown administrative building to the east of the Treasury. 95% of the surrounding plain has never been excavated, like Göbekli Tepe, Persepolis. In October 1971, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi of Iran hosted a party that many described as the most extravagant in history. The event celebrated the 2500th anniversary of the Persian monarchy. Location: Persepolis. 69 heads of state attended. Among them were kings, queens, presidents, and emperors. Haile Selassie from Ethiopia was there, Prince Philip from the United Kingdom. Spiro Agnew, the Vice President of the United States, was also in attendance. The Shah erected an entire tent city at the foot of the Persepolis terrace, complete with silk pavilions designed by a French interior designer and equipped with air conditioning in the Iranian desert. Food was flown in from Maxim's in Paris. There were 25,000 bottles of the finest French wine. The cost is estimated to range from $200 million to $600 million. In 1971 dollars. Meanwhile, millions of Iranians were living in poverty. The Shah used Persepolis to legitimize his own power, associating himself with the splendor of Cyrus, Darius, and Xerxes of the Achaemenid dynasty. It didn't work. 8 years later, the Iranian Revolution overthrew him. Among the grievances listed by the revolutionaries was the obscene extravagance of the 1,971 celebrations. Ironically, however, Persepolis was unaffected by the revolution. The new Islamic Republic initially considered demolishing it, but ultimately decided that it belonged to the Iranian people, not the Shah. In 1979, UNESCO added Persepolis to the World Heritage List. The ruins that Alexander burned, which the Shah tried to use, and which the revolution chose not to destroy, now belong to all of us. This is a detail that no one can forget once they have heard it. The bas-reliefs on the Persepolis staircase depict 36 nations paying tribute to the Persian king, and were deliberately carved without a single image of violence. There are no battle scenes. There are no defeated enemies. There are no conquered peoples in chains. While all the other great empires of the ancient world, Egypt, Assyria, and Babylon, adorn their monuments with images of conquest and domination, Persepolis chose something different. The staircase depicts the peoples of the world walking freely and uprightly, bearing the gifts of their civilizations. Each delegation is depicted in distinctive costumes and hairstyles, accompanied by their animals. The Persians are not depicted as masters, they are depicted as hosts. Scholars debate the meaning of this. Was Cyrus's philosophy carved in stone? Was it Persian propaganda, a carefully crafted image of a benevolent empire? Or was it something rarer still, a genuine statement carved into limestone 2,500 years ago, stating that different peoples could live together under the same roof without submitting to one another? 2,500 years ago, on a mountain in Iran. The answer to this question is still being debated. Perhaps it always will be. But the image is still there, carved into stone and burned by Alexander. It was not completely destroyed. It stands in the same Persian wind that blew over the platform where Darius first stood. Looking out over the Marv-dashed plain, he decided to build something worthy of the world he ruled. What do you think Persepolis truly represents? Is it proof that an empire could be both magnificent and humane? Or a warning that even the greatest things can be burned down in a single night? Or is it simply the most beautiful inscription ever carved in stone, showing that at its best, human civilization can achieve extraordinary things? Can achieve extraordinary things? Write your answer below. Like, subscribe, and, as always, see you in the past.